Welcome to MVIF Conversations, the podcast.
Welcome to another inspiring episode of MVIF Conversations, the podcast. I'm Svetlana, your host today, and we are thrilled to have Kristina Campbell joining us. Kristina is a science and biotech writer specializing in the human microbiome. Her work covers the full landscape of this rapidly evolving field, from breakthrough scientific discoveries to the real-world applications. She speaks with leading researchers, clinicians, and innovators to explore what microbiome science means for our lives, whether the topic is fecal microbiota transplantation, probiotic efficacy, or the latest microbiome-focused startups. Kristina is the author and co-author of several books, including IBS for Dummies, Gut Health for Dummies, The Well-Fed Microbiome Cookbook, and Gut Microbiota Interactive Effects on the Nutrition and Health. Her core commitment is getting the science right, that said, delivering evidence-based insights rather than hype. Welcome, Kristina.
Thank you. It's such a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, I'm really happy to have you back because you are our supporter since, I think, beginning. So
yes.
We appreciate your support of MVIF initiative and events and all what we are trying to do for microbiome science community. So before we dive into microbiome science, I really would love to hear from you, Kristina, your origin story. So how did you get into microbiome science writing, and what drew you to this field specifically?
Well, it started with me having some terrible gut issues. And this was about probably 15 years ago. And I had some gut problems, and I had seen a doctor, didn't receive a diagnosis, and was just looking around for some kind of solution. And, you know, if you've ever had this kind of problem, there are so many things that, you know, bombard you that different kind of cures and solutions, and not all of them are science-based. And so I felt a bit overwhelmed with all of these things that, you know, I was told to do, and decided, well, I would love to follow the science on this. And so very quickly I came across the area of microbiome science, and I was just really intrigued. And then, some of the interventions that target the gut microbiome, fermented foods, probiotics, prebiotics, I started to get curious and want to look into the science to see, like, what evidence is there around some of these things. And I just got deeper and deeper into that. And simultaneously, I had a blog and was exploring some of these. And one thing led to another. I got a call one day and was asked to blog for a GI website. And then, I never looked back. I just continued writing in this kind of niche field of gut health, the microbiome, and then microbiology in general after that.
I see. So did you solve your gut issue?
I did.
I hope so.
Yes. And it was not one kind of silver bullet, but
of course.
Over time. And I think for me, it really, over time, highlighted how important lifestyle is. And we can talk more about this later, but just that those small changes in lifestyle actually add up, and they're not going to work overnight, but they will work over the long term. And that's what it was for me, I believe, just, changing my lifestyle in various ways. And I remember early on when I was a blogger, I would call up some of these leading scientists in the field, and just to see if they would, agree to an interview. And I remember I got Stanley Falco on the line this one time, and I was just so thrilled. I was like calling him. I was sweating because he was such a big name, and just such a wonderful person to talk to when I did get him on the line. But anyway, I heard this story from him about when he was a trainee. He had apparently worked with a physician that post-surgery was giving these special pills to the patients after their surgery, he'd tell them, go home, take these special pills and eat lots of salad. And it turned out those pills were full of like an autologous fecal transplant from the patient themselves. And so it was not
Interesting.
really known and not allowed, but the physician had found great success with this approach. And so anyway, this story that Stanley Falco told me, I was just really hooked. And I was like, what do you mean fecal transplants? And then, of course, they've evolved over time, and now they're an FDA approved therapy. So
Yeah. So you mentioned that you are actually trying to contact the scientists, and you are actually talking to scientists to get the information. Yeah. So I'm curious, what's the most surprising thing you have learned about the microbiome that changed how you think about health, about gut health, let's say?
Yes, I would say it hasn't been one single insight, but just it's amazing to me how time after time the microbiome, the gut microbiome in particular, is shown to be part of the mechanism by which food affects your health. To me, that's such a huge game changer, because looking into nutrition research, a lot of it is epidemiological, and even on a personal level, many of us, when we eat, we don't think of it as kind of having an immediate effect on our body. Of course, we generally know what are healthy foods, and that, we'll live longer if we eat healthy foods. But that mechanism that underlines the immediacy of, the effect of food on your health, I think that is a game changer to me. And it was surprising to me to learn just how powerful diet is. And I guess, as I was saying with my gut problems, I kind of found that out firsthand. And just like, for example, for me, it was increasing fiber hugely in my
I
diet
see.
and reducing sugar a little bit. And that made a massive difference to my health. And because I had sort of IBS-like symptoms. And I know once you get really far down the path of IBS, sometimes you can't even eat fiber. It's just, it irritates your gut too much. So, but I guess, I was able to increase fiber. And then over a course of months, I found, that things were much better. And so anyway, and the science bears this out, right? And there's so much science now on that mechanism of fiber translates to certain bacteria in your gut, and metabolites translates to health outcomes. So that to me is so cool.
Yeah, indeed. So let's go back to your writing process, because I really would like to hear how how do you do it. So one of the challenges I imagine you face constantly is balancing accuracy with accessibility. So how do you navigate that when you are writing for a general audience?
That is, yes, a very valid tension in my work. And so I guess my approach, so with, for example, the dummies guides, the 4 dummies guides, so those are meant to be very, very accessible, very plain language. And yet, in some of my other work, when I'm writing for scientists, helping with a manuscript even, I use a lot of jargon and, try to get the nuances exactly right. So I guess when I'm writing for the public, my rule of thumb is that I try to make things consistent with the science, even if it doesn't represent all facets of the science at the moment. So, let's say with fiber, like a lot of people in the general public, they just want to know the upshot, like, what should I do? And it's interesting because the first book that I wrote was called The Well-Fed Microbiome Cookbook. And the publisher really wanted some kind of a 6-step plan. Here are the rules that you can use to,
kind of protocol or step-by-step instructions.
to keep a healthy microbiome. And I told her, first of all, we don't know what a healthy microbiome is. And second, we don't have the 6-step plan or exactly, you don't know exactly what to do. So I had to push back a little bit on that. And I think, yeah, it's tricky because the publishing industry really wants to channel you in a certain direction. But I think, so what we agreed, we would do 2 chapters about the science and just generally describe the principles, the rough principles, right? Like eat more fiber, try to hit the fiber target for one thing that, that dietary guidelines recommend. And try to keep it consistent with the science, but not necessarily trying to squeeze every single detail into there. And that's the approach that I've taken in subsequent books as well. Like really in the framework of what I'm writing, I really try to do it from the point of view of a consumer who really just wants to know the, final take homes. And then so structure it like that, and then make everything consistent with the science. But yeah, don't kind of go down those paths of those digressions, right? That a scientist would be interesting, but the public is just like, no, I don't have time for this. So,
Yeah,
so I think it's more about like what to put in, what to leave out. And that's
I
a lot of
see.
what I think about.
I see. Okay, and I believe we have listeners who might be aspiring science writers, so some of whom might be interested in microbiome specialization eventually. So, what advice would you give someone just starting their career, perhaps wondering if this field is right for them?
Yes. In fact, I've been chatting with a number of people recently who are, interested in this field. And what I've been telling them, I have to be honest, it's a very difficult time right now for science writing. I think, well, I'm positioned in Canada, and there's a lot going on in, our neighbor's house in the United States. And just in terms of funding cuts and different things, and it's also just with the digital environment. This spans every country, right? The digital environment is very difficult. It feels sometimes like we're being drowned out. The scientific voices are, in this huge sea of misinformation and disinformation and AI generated slop. And it's hard to really have a clear voice and establish, what is the scientific facts and truth. So yeah, it's tricky. But I would say that within the science writing community, it has galvanized us a little bit more as individual writers working wherever we're working. We're coming together. So one of the channels is I'm part of the Canadian Science Writers Group. So SWCC we're called. And yeah, we're coming up with ways, solutions and ways to, be out there and be clear in what science is, and advocate for that, because I think the public still needs to have these voices among all this other stuff, right? It's important not to give up. And I think there are still some wonderful careers out there in science communication. They definitely won't look like the careers of the past in this field. I think someone like Ed Yong, who's a well-known science communicator, that the path that he took, for example, is probably not the path that someone now would take. He was a blogger for National Geographic. I would say a lot of the major publications have reduced their staff. They're not doing as much blogging or even commissioning of articles. So yeah, I think there's less opportunity for those kind of freelance opportunities, and and growth at paid publications. But there's a lot of opportunity for independent science writers, and then kind of forging your own path and finding finding ways to produce content and cobble together some sort of career from that.
Yeah, I see. But what do you think about, for example, if PhD student wants to blog about his project or their project and just share their experience along the journey? Maybe that's uh, one good trial of writing to the general audience.
Yeah.
Or I noticed that, for example, social media like LinkedIn or Blue Sky, they are now very popular platforms where younger researchers, or yeah, any researchers, they really like to share their experience and findings and reach the community. So yeah, maybe that's also a good starting point.
I
Yeah.
agree. Yeah, those platforms are wonderful. So anything where, yeah, you can have an audience and practice
Mm-hmm.
and get
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
feedback,
like
right?
a practice. Yeah.
Yeah, and there are a lot of blogs out there looking for content as well. So yeah, there are lots of opportunities if if you don't mind getting paid or not.
True.
Some
Yes, you're
a
right.
lot of uh, a lot
Yeah,
of
yeah.
blogs will accept submissions and
Yeah, and
actually.
volunteers. Yeah, yeah, Christina, you're right. Yeah, I forgot that aspect, but very important one. Okay, and yeah, from your years of observing writings and not only writing but also talking to scientists and reading different books and texts and publications in scientific community, are there any common mistakes you see in microbiome science writing?
There are, I think, there are certain words that within the scientific community they're not received well, but I think people from the outside who aren't in this field every day tend
Mm-hmm.
to overuse or misuse things. Things like balance. Trying
Mm-hmm.
to say balance when it's hard to scientifically define that. Um, and I think for me, the one that's the most commonly misused, the set of terms are around the biotics. So probiotics, prebiotics, symbiotics, postbiotics,
Mm-hmm.
particularly pro and post. So I think just as a quick overview, so these are interventions targeting the microbiota. And with probiotics, I think many people think that it's kind of any beneficial microbes, but there is a scientific definition which was set out by the WHO and then later by ISAP, the organization. And so basically they're only ones that have been characterized, quantified, and tested that has to be in place before you call something a probiotic. So for example, the microbes in sauerkraut, while they may be sort of beneficial species, they're not probiotics because they haven't been quantified, right? They're just this wild mix, and you never know if one batch is the same as the other.
True,
So
true.
it applies mainly to interventions that come in a pill that are quantified, right? And some foods, like some commercial foods that have a certain quantity added, can be called probiotics as well. So I think that's a common misunderstanding. And then postbiotics as well. The again, the ISAP definition is essentially heat killed or killed inactivated microbes that have a health benefit. And I think a lot of people still think that postbiotics are the metabolites, the non-living metabolites, but it's not true.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, as far as the scientific consensus, and I know there's been a lot of debate on the term postbiotics and at various scientific meetings. I think in the literature, it's really emerging that that they are the inactivated microbes, and that's moving forward. I think the scientific community is going to come to a consensus around that a little more, and the term will be less frequently misused. So.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I see. So, okay. So let's shift now a bit to actual science, and I was wondering. What's the most exciting, because every day we have almost, yeah, every day we have all around the world very exciting findings in different kind of microbiome, so not only human microbiome but different environments and so on. And for you, what's the most exciting recent development in microbiome research that you think people should know about, or maybe you were fascinated by this finding?
Yeah. I guess for me, well, in microbiome science, I do think there's some super exciting work going on in mechanism right now. And in terms of, yeah, again, like translating microbiome and metabolite changes into health benefits. But I tend to get more excited myself by interventions, because I guess just the fact that we're starting to have microbiome targeting interventions, and interventions that have been devised by knowing about the microbiome is pretty exciting, because I think it can make a huge impact within pharma, which has had traditionally, a very different approach. So I guess a few years ago, 2, 3 years ago now, it was very exciting when the FDA approved the first two fecal transplant based
Mm-hmm.
therapies in the US. Because I think a lot of other countries do look to the US for, the cutting edge of these therapies. So that was exciting when those two were approved for recurrent C. difficile infection. And then there are a couple of others coming down the pipeline. I saw an alert the other day for one for IBS. It's in phase 2B, I believe,
Uh-huh.
clinical trials. And so
Also in USA or somewhere else?
that is a good question. It might have been in Europe, but
Uh-huh.
um,
Okay, okay.
it's Enterobiotics anyway, is the company.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay,
And
okay.
so, and they call it a full spectrum microbiome therapeutic. So I think
Mm-hmm.
it's
Mm-hmm.
also kind of fecal transplant based. It's hard to tell sometimes though from the websites of the companies, but yeah. So I think those types of things are exciting. I guess it's surprising to me how difficult it's been to ultimately produce efficacious therapeutics in this area. I think there was a wave of companies who took a single bug or a couple of bugs and did try to make those into therapeutics. They may not have stood up to the scrutiny of testing. So that kind of, ended. But some of these full spectrum ones do seem to be working. And yeah, to me, that's exciting. So I am not sure, like, everyone talks about then the next stage of this, where we won't
Mm-hmm.
just have like the fecal transplant, we'll have a consortium that's grown in a lab and administered to have the therapeutic effect. And again, that I think from what I hear and what I, see companies doing, it's enormously complex to do that, because you need regulatory approvals. Like there's just no pathway for this, right? And all of these bugs have to pass scrutiny and then be combined. And then what happens when they're combined? Is there different effects? And so um,
Yeah, of course.
companies
Yeah.
that are taking that approach, I think, are facing huge hurdles. But I still have faith that one day that'll be the case, and we'll have these very known and very safe cocktails that can be therapeutically effective.
Yeah, yeah, indeed, that's all really all fascinating. But we are also aware that there is a other side of that coin. So there are big questions in microbiome science that are still not answered. And do you have any in your mind, like that something should be still more explored and understand?
Yes, I do think Well, first of all, what is a healthy microbiome? That is, I
Yeah.
think if we could answer that, then so many things would be kickstarted, right? We could do so much more in this field. But recently, and I work with ISAP, there was a
Mhm.
podcast series there on exploring some of the latest approaches to what is a healthy microbiome. I still think, yeah, there's a long way to go. Some groups have had sort of computational approaches, taking data from thousands of people and trying to figure out what actually makes a microbiome. What are the like characteristics, or yeah, sort of using AI and different things to try to figure out, yeah, what are these? What do they have in common? What are the features? But
Mhm.
yeah, I still think we don't know. And yeah, it might be that everyone has a personal signature of a healthy microbiome. Like, that it's so personalized to your genes and other things, and it's an adaptation to your lifestyle, right? Like it might be that there's no gold standard, right? So
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think there's still a lot to learn there, but once we know that, then we can figure out if interventions bring us closer to that or further away, right? Right now, I don't know, someone recently used the term throwing spaghetti at the wall, seeing if it sticks, right? Like right now with
Mhm.
interventions, a lot of it's like, well, this might help, and then you test it and see if it helps. And so, yeah, we can get a lot more strategic, I think, over time in this field about
Mhm. Yeah.
what is being tested, what the scientists are testing and using as interventions. So, yeah, that's the main one. And then I think there are some questions around safety as well, like with interventions that target the microbiome and next generation probiotics, things like that. What are the safety parameters, and especially long term? With fecal transplant, there are some efforts to figure out long term and track people who have had fecal transplants. With C. difficile, recurrent C. difficile infection, it's kind of, I don't know, safety isn't as much of a concern because the people are really, very, very sick. They might not have survived without this fecal transplant. So that, you're saving their lives. So long-term safety is a secondary consideration. But when it's for something like IBS, I think safety is hugely important, and tracking those outcomes over time. And even just like any side effects that show up maybe that are not life-threatening, but make
Mhm.
life a little, not as comfortable. So, yeah, so I think there are lots of things to explore with safety.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Definitely. There is still to discover a lot. And yeah, you're right. And given the speed of the field of microbiome science, I imagine you are thinking about where we are headed. So what is your like prediction in 5 years? So what do you think that the microbiome field will look like?
Yeah. I do think there's a lot of cool science going on, and it seems like a lot of publications are having bigger and bigger cohorts and more sophisticated approaches. So I think that will continue. I maybe predict that there will be some more interventions out there that are based on the microbiome. And I think and hope that the general public will really have embraced the idea of gut health and the fact that you really have to pay attention to the gut microbiome, and and implied in that is just that immediacy of what you eat and how that affects your health over the short term, not just the long term. So, yeah, I guess I'm hoping that a lot of what happens will be that public awareness um, and people getting freshly motivated to change their lifestyle.
Mm,
Because I
yeah.
know if you look at the statistics, like it's quite discouraging about how many people actually get the daily requirements for fiber and you know um, all the processed foods and sweet drinks out there. And we
Yeah.
know in the science that those are detrimental, but they're still consumed so widely. So yeah, how and I think it's part of maybe a broader shift in the food system, and there's many factors, right? But I think the microbiome can be a driving force toward better, healthier lifestyles for people, and maybe more curiosity. I tend to hope more curiosity about the science, and so the scientists engaging more too with the public around this.
Yeah, that is very, very important. Okay, and for the end, I have to ask you, where do you see MVIF in 5 years? Like, what is the role of our initiative, like in the future of microbiome science?
I think it's such an important initiative. It is so, and the way that you've built it is just so accessible and inclusive. I learn all the time new names of amazing scientists that are working in this field and doing really cool things, just from your programs that you publish. So, yeah, I feel like your group, MVIF, is really that on the ground presence around the world. And again, funneling those people to this forum where it's so accessible to learn about the latest in the field, exchange ideas, and maybe spark new ideas, right? So I
Yeah,
think having this international forum, and international conferences too have changed over the past 5 years,
yeah,
since
very
COVID
true.
lockdown, and then
Mm-hmm.
post is, yeah, I think the character of conferences, the size of conferences has changed. And so having this kind of established international forum is so important, I think, for people. Yeah, they can tune in. It doesn't take much, click of a button, and then they can access all these ideas and people from around the world. And so, yeah, I hope that continues, and I think there will be a strong demand for that forward. And like, that's been the really cool part about microbiome science to date, is that, yeah, it's so international. It seems like in some fields you can get locked into one country, one kind of lab group, or it's there are silos all over. But yeah, microbiome science seems so international, collaborative. So this, I think, is a key tool to keep it that way.
Yeah, I totally agree, Christina. Okay, thank you so much for joining us today. It's been an absolute pleasure, and I think our listeners will take a lot away from your insights about science writing, the state of microbiome research, and where this field is headed. And thank you all for tuning in to the MVIF Conversations, the podcast. Until next time, keep questioning, keep learning, and keep supporting vigorous microbiome science. Bye bye.
Bye. Thanks, Svetlana.
My pleasure.
Thank you for listening to MVIF Conversations, the podcast. Until next time.